All right. We will call to order the joint meeting of the School Board and City Council. Welcome, City School Board members, members of the public. So I have on here, we're doing a roll call to order. That's atypical for us, but if that's what we need to do, that's what we'll do. Is that okay? All right, let's go ahead.
Baker?
Here.
Bullock? Absent. Evans?
Here.
Keppel?
Here?
Marks? Here. Rader?
Yep.
Streebig? Here.
Thank you. And I too would like to call the Lakewood Board of Education to order. And with that, Mr. Zeman, the roll.
Mr. Callahan.
Here.
Mrs. Katzenberger.
Here.
Mrs. Shaughnessy.
Here.
Mrs. Clark-Sutton.
Here.
Mrs. Dotman.
Here.
Thank you.
All right, if you're able, please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. All right, I will move to adopt the agenda. Motion's been made and seconded. Any discussion from council? Hearing none. All those in favor? Aye. And that motion passes.
Thank you. And I too would make a motion to adopt the agenda as amended to add a second executive session purpose. Is there a second?
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you.
Right, great. So the next item up is discussion of the proposed downtown development project. And I believe we'll be going to Assistant Director Boss.
So I appreciate it, Madam President, and members of council, members of the Board of Education. Good evening. If you don't know me, I'm David Boss. I'm the Assistant Director for Planning and Development for the city. I'll be taking you through just kind of a brief introduction to the project. If you're not familiar with it, I hope you're a little familiar with it or heard of it, but we've got representatives from the Casto team, the developer team, as well as our independent financial review, PMC, is here, and as well as the city's retained counsel for this project. So I think hopefully everybody's familiar with the site. The former hospital site, they're bounded by Marlow and Bell and Detroit on the north. It's roughly 5.5 acres. We are approaching this project within, under our zoning code, a chapter called Plan Development, which allows, for innovative uses, more flexible uses of zoning. It is the most arduous of the review and approval processes because it is a full rezoning of the property itself. We believe that it's applicable. The development is consistent with the community vision here. We are seeking compact development, more pedestrian-friendly site design, street character, energy efficiency, and industry best practices. The key elements of this development program that, through this process that we've really started with Casto since about 2022, these are the key elements of it. It provides for, introduces new retail space, provides the needed affordable housing units, that opportunity for that unique community space within the heart of the downtown. We're very happy in terms of the current plan and how it preserves the historic Curtis Block building there at the corner of Marlow and Detroit. And we're hoping that this, especially the flexible retail space, as well as the influx of almost 300 new dwelling units into this area, will serve as a catalyst for additional opportunities downtown. As well as in the heart of the development, you'll see a fairly sizable parking structure to meet the parking requirements of all of that residential and commercial uses, as well as spaces that are held over from the hospital master plan for Cleveland Clinic and a portion that are retained for public use. And so we can get into that as we start to go through the details of the project itself and where it sits. So as part of this process that really started kind of, several years ago, as we've gone through the city through a public process, develop, these development objectives. They really haven't changed through the different iterations of this process. So I'll leave these up here for a minute. But these are kind of the guiding objectives, guiding principles that we've worked off of throughout this process. We can come back to these if you want to see them in detail. Some of the other things that have, one of the other important things that have evolved since we've restarted the process with Casto in 2022 is that council provided us a set of development priorities as well, centered on density and opportunity, community space, local business, the Curtis Block itself, sustainability, affordable and accessible housing, and fiduciary responsibility that are also guiding the development and kind of the review of this project. With that, I'm going to pull up the most recent plans that were approved at the beginning of the month by our Architectural Board of Review. I'll invite Colby Turncock from Casto to come up. So this plans that really, the plan development process moves through 5 distinct steps. And we're basically through 4 of them. The first 2 are a preliminary review by the Planning Commission and then Architectural Board of Review. The developer then kind of integrates all that feedback, and that process comes back on the 3rd step when you begin the final PD, final plan review. Goes through Planning Commission, goes through Architectural Board of Review again, and then the 5th and final step is where we're at now when it is submitted kind of in its final form, where you submit the plan, the actual plat, the plat for the parcels, and then in this case, we do have a development agreement. Not all plan developments have a development agreement, but this one does. So those 3 elements then get elevated to City Council for their consideration, review, towards the final approval for the project. And so that's where we're at. I'll talk about the process a little bit more in detail once we get through this. So switch over to the site plan for you.
Thank you. Colby Turnock with Casto. Thanks for being here this evening. And as Dave mentioned, we've gone through a fairly robust review process, so we're really happy with where things ended up. We've got a lot of great comments back through boards and commissions and other public meetings that we've integrated into the plan, and the culmination of what you see on the screen in front of you now. So just very high level, I thought I'd walk you through the plan. And Dave, I don't know if you want to kind of go through some of the renderings as I'm talking, but I know there's a pretty big deck. So I'll work my way north to south, so from Detroit down. The red building at the corner is the Curtis Block building. We've looked at various ways to address the Curtis Block building. Ultimately, we decided to save it in its form. It does 2 things. One, it provides a nice anchor for the project at that corner. It also provides a nice bookend to the plaza, which is kind of the central heart of this project, and allows for us to activate the west end of the Curtis Block to engage with the plaza. We will have ground floor retail opportunities in the Curtis Block that will be probably more geared towards local retail uses, which is one of the community objectives for the project. And then there's the residential units above. Previous plans, we had it kind of interacting with Building 1. We've decided to pull Building 1 off of the Curtis Block. So there's a nice kind of pedestrian connection between the 2 buildings now that leads you from Marlowe to the plaza. Building 1 is the blue footprint that you see with the pink in the corner and the parking behind. That is a podium-style building, which will be 4 stories over the podium. The ground floor will be roughly almost 25,000 square feet of retail, along with the residential leasing and operations office. That's what you see in the pink. The parking, which is under the podium, I think we're at 34 spaces now, really will be for residential or potentially retail employees or folks who will be there using it day in and day out and not needing to kind of navigate. So the general public parking is in the garage to the south, which you see kind of mid-block. And that's 536 spaces. The ground floor will be available for the retail and public. That's 125 plus or minus spaces right now. And then the upper floors would be reserved for the tenants of the project, and also the commitment to the clinic, the 75 spaces that transfers with the property. So what we've ended up doing along Bell with the garage frontage is it got really narrow, so it's challenging to have units fronting the garage there. So we introduced a linear park. That's what you see along Bell on the garage frontage. And when Dave starts flipping through the elevations, you'll see that the garage is it's cladded in brick. It's a pretty nice public-facing garage. And then you have this kind of unique experience of this linear park with some artwork opportunities as you kind of traverse down Bell. And then I guess he'll get. So that's okay. And feel free to ask questions when I'm done. I know I'm kind of breezing through all this, and I probably take advantage of the fact that we've done this so many times. It's kind of ingrained in my brains, but I know it may not be in yours, so feel free to ask any questions. But there's the garage. Again, the public parking would be on that ground floor. You come through this kind of pocket plaza area, either to the leasing office if you're a prospective tenant, or there's a retail corridor for people to get to the retail that fronts on the plaza on Detroit. On the opposite side of this garage is a 4-story residential building. What we've done with the project overall is kind of step the density from 5 stories to 4 stories to 3 stories as you work your way north to south. The 4-story building has a lot of the same architectural language as Building 1 that fronts Detroit. It just steps down a little bit. We introduced some of the front porch elements, speaking to the character of the neighborhood, and then kind of making this transition from a more kind of contemporary building in Building 1 to the more residential scale, and then even more so as we go to Building 4, which really starts to incorporate the Lakewood design aesthetic that you'll see here. So while it is a 3-story corridor building, the exterior, really mimics kind of the feel of the bedroom community of the residential on Marlowe. And this was, we got a lot of good feedback from ABR on this building in particular that our design team worked hand in hand with to get this one right. So really proud about where this one ended up. Another important component on the south side is we introduced a pocket park shown here in the middle of this building. So as we worked through ABR and Planning Commission, there was a lot of comments on the plaza, a lot of comments on the linear park, and a lot of comments on the pocket park. So everything that you see kind of in these renditions is the direction that was provided by those boards and commissions, and we reacted to those. So the desire here was really to have a passive kind of open green space because it's such a rarity to find in a densely populated community. And so instead of having a formalized kind of planted area, the desire was to have this more informal, just open green space that people can kind of choose how to use it. So that's what this image represents. So all in all, we're just under 300 multifamily units. There are 7 for sale units that are to the very rear of the site. We haven't shown anything for those yet. We've been focused kind of on the primary of the multifamily uses in the larger buildings. But there are 7 for sale townhome units at the very southwestern side of the site. So that's kind of the overview of the project as a whole. Again, I know I'm kind of breezing through it, but happy to answer any more detailed questions that you may have.
President Callahan, I'll turn it over to your members first if
Thank you.
they have questions.
Perhaps I'll begin with just one, just a point of clarity. That linear park runs north-south on Bell, correct?
Correct.
Thank you. Any questions from the board?
Can you go back to the first picture that you gave us with the one with the drawing, like
The site plan?
the site plan? Thank you. Thank you. Okay, so the parking deck is considered building 3 then? Is that,
Building 3 is actually the residential building that's shown in orange next to it. It would be building 2.
okay. I got the building 4 and I didn't see where 3 went, so, okay, thank you.
How many of the units are 1-bedroom efficiency to 3-bedroom? Just thinking of, do you anticipate it primarily being single people or couples or families?
I think the market would probably lean heavy towards young working couples and single. With that said, we do have larger 3-bedroom units to have an alternate housing option for families. The mix right here, Dave just pulled it up. It was probably pretty small to see on the site plan, but you can see where we are from a count with the studios, 1-bedrooms, 2-bedrooms, and 3-bedrooms. Thanks for blowing that up, Dave.
What is your definition of affordable?
And I would maybe ask Dave, it's the city defines the AMI.
So we have our Community Reinvestment Act, one that covers the whole city. CRA 1 has a provision that was passed in 2019 where developments over 100 units can pursue an abatement if they certify and on a recurring basis, annual basis, that they have 20% of the units they'll be deemed and defined as by the city's affordability as affordable. So 10%, so half of that 20% is for 80% of area median income and below. And then the other.
Just give me some dollars.
AMI changes every year, but that's
So what is it this year?
as HUD defines it, it's probably around like $55,000 a year household income, total household income. That is an approximate number, because it is based on household size. So the number of people.
So the income, so a one person.
It's a graduated scale.
Right,
Yeah,
so
I'd have
is
to
the-
pull it up to tell you the
Right.
exact numbers.
So, yeah, I don't need exact numbers, but the 55,000 is for a family of 3 or a family of one person?
I think it's a family of like 3 or 4.
And so 20% of the bill of.
So
houses.
10% is at 80% or below, and then the other 10% is between 80 and 120 of AMI.
Thank you.
So just, so say it was a 2-bedroom, 2-bath, affordable housing unit for a family of 3 or 4, in either one of these categories, can you give me just an idea of this year what that would rent for? Like what the family would pay for that? Or how would that I just want to make sure I understand what that would mean for a family.
For the rent itself?
Yeah.
I think I'd have to defer to Casto in terms of, and we can get into that, I think, once we get to the financials. But
I mean, yeah, just an idea of like,
What's affordable?
Yeah, I mean, our model is a projection of kind of when so we're looking, 2 years out. So based on kind of the market rents for your example, 2-bedroom, 2-bath, approximately 1,000 square feet. We look at everything kind of on a price per square foot, so it's probably around $250 to $275 a square foot. So on the higher end, you're at $2,800, $2,500 on the lower end for that 2-bedroom example.
$800 for a 2-bedroom, 2-bath. Can we see the side view again? Like if we're standing on Bell and then if we're standing on Marlowe and we're looking at the whole building?
Like building one, like this is the perspective from Marlowe at building one. This is a perspective from Bell.
So the Marlowe side, that's the Curtis building?
Curtis building would be up here. This is building one.
Okay.
There's Curtis Block and the alley that he talked about between building one and Curtis Block.
And, I'm sorry, I know we're asking you to zoom back and forth. With the site plan, I was trying to eyeball it with the plaza and the pocket park. Are those roughly the same size? Or am I looking at the right thing?
They're probably pretty similar in size. The plaza has a little bit more dimension to it because it kind of sneaks in behind the Curtis block there. I think we ended up on the plaza around 15,000 square feet.
Will the people in those housing units feel like that's their front yard and be upset when other people use it?
The way it's intended to be programmed, no.
And the pocket park is, so if the plaza is 15,000 square feet, roughly, what is the pocket park?
I do have that, and I don't have it on the top of my head, but I'd hate to take a guess at it and be way off, but certainly can follow up with its actual dimensions.
Okay. I mean, I'm just trying to think it through. I know that with, I think the pocket park idea is a great one, and it's great to have the green space kind of woven through, and the linear park is a nice idea too, especially trying to give something nicer to look at than a parking garage. And I think I heard you say something about some public art, which is also always lovely. I know that one of the things that has come up is with the plaza area is people wanting more of a open space for community events and everything. And when I think pocket park, I think pretty small. And so if the plaza and the pocket park are roughly the same size, I'm trying to picture what that's going to look like from a public use perspective for the plaza. If that's,
Yeah, I think through the process over the last 2 years, the plaza has kind of grown and it has decreased depending on
yes, I know.
various tenants we've looked at. But the original one that we showed was 18,000 square feet, so it's closer to the original plaza size.
Okay.
It was really impacted by a previous user we were working with, and it shrunk dramatically.
Yeah.
So in some regards, while it was tough to move on from that approach, we do feel that this is the best approach to engage with the plaza. It will be much more organic with different tenants engaging with it than having a single tenant kind of monopolizing that frontage and really
Certainly.
reducing it.
But it'll be more like that, 18, 15, roughly that.
I think it's like just under 15,000.
Okay.
Are there interested tenants for retail?
There are. We have not really pushed marketing yet, but just through press and kind of these last round of meetings, the phone's been ringing quite a bit. So we want to kind of take our time and pick and choose the right tenants that will give us the best vibrancy to engage with the plaza and be the right mix for the neighborhood and the project.
I'm going to be annoyingly nitpicky. How much do you project the rent to be for a one-bedroom, one-bath?
It really depends on the size. There's quite a range of offerings. It could be in the 1,300 range up to the 1,800 range. It just depends on the size, and that's
Sure.
kind of looking through our crystal ball of market
Right.
rents in 2 years from now.
Are there any other questions from the board? Perhaps I turn it back over to President Keppel.
All right, thank you. Members of council, I know we've had more opportunity to see these renderings and evolve over many iterations, so I don't expect we have a lot of changes since we saw this last week, but if does anybody have anything they'd like to ask or clarify at this point? One thing I just want to mention in terms of, and can correct me if I'm wrong, but in terms of the rent, when we're talking about the 80 to 120 AMI units, part of the way that is written into our code is that those units need to be at the level of the other units. So those price points that were provided don't necessarily speak to the 80 and 120 units, just depending. So just keeping in mind that you're not getting a 80% unit that has, I don't know, not the same level of furnishings and presentation as the other units. So I just thought that was an important point to make. All right, council members, any comments, questions before we move in? All right. Members of the administration, anything else you want to add at this point?
I have the process schedule, but we can cover that at another time if you want, President, or I can cover that.
I think that would be useful to maybe put up now.
So just for the members of the Board of Education and members of council as well, this is the process schedule that we've been working off of really since May. And it's been updated as we've tried to forecast and kind of, the entire process, the approval process for a PD, which I mentioned, is multi-stepped as you move through it and trying to outline the meetings and just baseline everybody's expectations. So we kind of work left to right, top to bottom, as you follow kind of the lines down through the months. There's when we started in July with the submission, and then as we worked our way through a series of joint planning commission and ABR meetings to kind of baseline both of those, that board and that commission together, so that it's a lesson learned in the past that sometimes when you get two groups of people together that have kind of like the Venn diagram of responsibilities with overlaps in the middle, sometimes you get conflicting guidance if they don't meet at the same time. And so we purposely put those two groups in the same room for the initial meetings so that we could knock out some of the kind of the macro level review details and slap the table as a group before the commission and the board then went off on their own and finished the review process. And so Planning Commission completed their review there in September through 3 meetings, and then ABR took an additional 3 meetings to get to their approval. We held an open house there at the end of August, and then we've been meeting with City Council periodically. As you can see, the black diamonds there, we've completed a meeting on the 23rd of last month, and then a meeting last week on the 21st, and then we're now in the yellow halo diamond there on the 29th. And as I mentioned, kind of we're at that City Council development agreement portion of the process. So now we've outlined a submission, really, and eyeing the requirement for the compensation agreement and how the board plays into this, looking at a submission date on or about the 8th to meet the docket deadlines for both organizations' meetings on the 18th of November. An important thing to note, and that we've been working through in the last week with our law department, is our code specifies a 45-day review window for council once a final PD is submitted to council for review. So based on the research and the discussion that we've had, that 45-day period based on the 18th of November as kind of that is the first docket that we are eyeing this item to be on the actual docket. That 45-day window will expire basically at the end of the year. And so what we're working through right now is that we know we have council meetings on the 18th, the 2nd of December, and the 16th of December with corresponding committee of the whole meetings that also can mirror those. But we're now working with clerk of council, president of council for the potential for a fourth meeting if it's needed at the end of December so that we can get this project through its review process at the appropriate level of review without being time pressurized, but still get to a decision before the end of the year within that 45-day period. And so that's what's outlined here currently. It's an update from the last week that we shared this and we reviewed this with council, and so that's why it's a good idea to highlight it. But it does also highlight that the length of this process. We will have gone through at least 9 or 10 more than that, formal public meetings in a variety of other public meetings, open houses, and that's just the final review of this, the final 3 steps of this process. This thing has gone through the first 2 steps. It went through in 2022, 2023, so it has been a long public process that this project's been through, and we are in kind of the 11th hour of it to get it across the goal line. And so that's just this tool. I've constantly kept this thing up to date just to keep everyone baselined on the same expectations, the same meetings, and the same kind of deadlines, so that we're all working towards the same thing. So with that, Madam President, I believe that's all we have. So I'll turn it back over.
Councilman Bullock.
I do have one follow-up question, and I sent school board member Colin Clerk Sutton a follow-up because I tracked down from HUD the definitions of what you were asking about, the income limits. What's 80%? So that's in your. But my question for the administration or for CASA would be, how do we convert that income limit into the rent, the corresponding rent at 80%? I was trying to quickly look and see if there's a corresponding rent upper ceiling for 80% versus 100% versus 120%. Do you have a quick way to convert that?
Off the top of my head, Councilman, I don't. We do have procedures that have been established for the developer has to, after the project is approved, before basically as they submit construction documents, they apply for the CR01 abatement. That then comes to the Plan Development Office for review. We go through that, and that's why we have we have a development officer, we have people that work in development, and they review all that application, they review all the HUD data, the HUD rent limits, the HUD income limits.
So the detail comes in that document,
Yes.
and the numbers themselves will be compliant with the
Yeah,
long
because they
established
are,
HUD regs.
and as you're well aware, HUD changes the rents, changes the income limits almost on an annual basis. And so those things are published, and that's where folks like Dan Wyman and other folks come in terms of that.
So we'll be using a long-established, well-established process that governs all such affordable housing categories. And I just say to our colleagues on the school board, I'm deepening and developing my own working understanding of what this project does and doesn't do. I think it probably does some things, not all things, but I ask myself the same questions. What does this do in terms of family, the mix of families that'll be there? Will there be school-age kids on campus or not? What does it do for fair housing and affordable housing supply? Does it do some things? Does it do all things? Probably yes, some, not all things, though. What does it do for economic development, right? Does it help the footprint? Does it help a quarter-mile radius around the footprint? So I think as we continue working through these, we'll have clearer and clearer answers on that, but that's kind of the dialogue that we have with the CASA, the developer, who's been want to compliment their determination, their stick-to-itiveness, and their significant investment in design, public engagement, and so forth. I do agree that, we all have our own oversight to perform on behalf of the voters in the community. And look forward to partnering with you as we get further into this. Thanks.
Thank you. All right, do we have anyone signed in for public comment?
Madam President, may I ask a question?
Sure.
You too. Am I on?
No, you're not. Just for clarification, that 45 days was your question,
Yeah.
right? That is the maximum, so once, like, 45 days is up, like, it expires, you have to start over with that 45 days, is that correct? Or you can extend it?
I think if they're approved.
Director
basically,
Varga,
if they-
want to offer some
That's
clarification?
typically, isn't it?
You know, you're asking a legal question, and it's not as easy as the question would suggest. It requires analysis, and the ordinance is subject to interpretation. So we'll manage the 45-day period and work closely with council, and very confident we'll meet the 45-day limit, starting from that docket date that was mentioned earlier. Thank you.
Okay, so I read that, I heard it differently than you did. I heard that.
Oh,
so
Mike.
I was wondering what the 45-day was. 45-day window for council to take action, meaning that you could just possibly walk away from this somewhere in that 45-day period.
I believe, I'm going to turn to Director Vargo again on the interpretation of the,
I mean, I'm sure
Thank
that's
you.
unlikely, but I'm not understanding what the 45-day window is.
Madam President, the 45 days is for council to consider it, deliberate on it, and to approve or disapprove.
Yeah, they have to make a decision.
So they must act in that 45-day window.
That is correct. Thank you.
So we would have to act within that 45-day window, right?
Through the president. The compensation agreement is intertwined with the development agreement, which will be decided by our council within that 45 days. So that is as nice as a way as I could say yes. Okay.
Just want it out there.
Okay, thank you.
did we end up having anyone signed in for public comment? All right. All right. Do we have anyone who wishes to make public comment? Yep. All right. So with that, I should offer any further comment from colleagues? Vice President Baker.
Yes, thank you, President Keppel, and thank you to the school board for attending and coming here to our offices. We appreciate it. But before we go into kind of the motions for executive session, recently become aware that TIF financing is at least being discussed here. In my day job, I work at Cleveland Metro Parks, which is a property tax funded organization. And I hope that there was an ability to separate the TIF from the development agreement. But after discussions with council, I was advised that it would be best to recuse myself to avoid the appearance of impropriety as a conflict of interest, seeing that I work for a property tax funded organization and have a fiduciary duty to that organization, and a TIF financing affects property tax funded organizations. So while I am disappointed that I will not be able to participate in these discussions or vote on the development agreement or the TIF, I do know that the city is led by competent professionals in the administration and the officials we have hired, and I'm confident that my colleagues can handle this appropriately and do what's best for the city. So thank you.
Thank you. All right. So with that, make a motion that City Council enter into executive session to consider confidential information related to the marketing plan's specific business strategy, production techniques, trade secrets, or personal financial statements of an applicant for economic development assistance, or to negotiations with other political subdivisions respecting requests for economic development assistance. And I'll include in that executive motion the administration and city consultants.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. Discussion? Councilman Rader.
Yeah, just for the record, and I think because this is a very highly watched topic and something a lot of people are really interested in, I'd like to know from our law department specifically, what laws allow us to enter into executive session, or what kind of general framework in Ohio Revised Code allows us to enter into executive session, and in order to discuss what, or the developer, or anyone else who wants to take this on. We've met already once in executive session to discuss a lot of these materials, but this being, again, a very watched subject is something that I think we owe the public at least an explanation for. Thank you.
Madam President, Councilman, we're going to have our outside counsel, Mr. Brendan Heil, address that question. Thank you.
Welcome, Mr. Heil.
Thank you, Madam President. To answer your question, Councilman, there's a specific exception in what is kind of colloquially known as the Ohio Open Meetings Act, which is Revised Code Section 121.22. It's actually 121.22 G8, which allows, and I'm paraphrasing because your motion is going to be far more specific, and it is that way intentionally, to make sure that you properly enter executive session. But generally speaking, when you have a request for economic development incentives, you can enter executive session under Ohio law to discuss those. And so it's specifically carved out in the Open Meetings Act to allow you to do that, to have those deliberations, if you meet the conditions of the two motions that are going to be before you.
Thank you. One quick follow-up. What makes these specific numbers, some of which we have been briefed on, important to keep confidential? What would be the motivation for doing this type of an executive committee session?
I can't speak to specifics on the motivations, but generally speaking, if there's a discussion of confidential information, which is part of your motion, it's in order to keep that information confidential, and trade secrets and business information, marketing materials. The motion is quite long, and it actually covers all of those, and that's generally why you're allowed to go into executive session, because you're talking about confidential business information.
Okay, thank you. Thank you.
We have a motion and a second on the first motion regarding executive session. Any further discussion from council members? Being none, Madam Clerk, the roll, please.
Baker?
Abstain.
Bullock?
Yes.
Evans?
Yes.
Keppel?
Yes.
Marks? Rader?
Yes.
Streebig?
Yes. Thank you. And then I'll make another motion pursuant to RC 121.22 G8 A and B. I move that the executive session is necessary because the information is directly related to request for economic development assistance to protect the interests of the applicant or the possible investment or expenditure of public funds to be made in connection with the economic development project. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. Motion's been made and seconded. Any discussion? Hearing none, Madam Clerk?
Baker?
Abstain.
Bullock?
Yes.
Evans?
Yes.
Keppel?
Yes.
Marks?
Yes.
Rader? Streebig?
Yes.
That motion passes. President Callahan.
Thank you, President Keppel. And then I would move that the Board of Education enter into executive session to consider confidential information related to the marketing plans, specific business strategy, production techniques, trade secrets, or personal financial statements of an applicant for economic development assistance, or to negotiations with other political subdivisions respecting requests for economic development assistance. Is there a second?
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Is there any discussion from the board? Mr. Zeman, the roll.
Mr. Callahan.
Aye.
Ms. Katzenberger.
Aye.
Ms. Shaughnessy.
Aye.
Ms. Clark-Sutton.
Aye.
Mrs. Dotman.
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you. And then in a similar fashion, pursuant to Revised Code 121.22 G8A and B, I move that the executive session is necessary because the information is directly related to a request for economic development assistance and to protect the interests of the applicant or the possible investment or expenditure of public funds to be made in connection with the economic development project. And with that, I move such, and is there a second?
Second.
Again, it's been moved and seconded. Is there any discussion there from the board? Great. And again, Mr. Zeman, the roll.
Mr. Callahan.
Aye.
Ms. Katzenberger.
Aye.
Ms. Shaughnessy.
Aye.
Ms. Clark-Sutton. Ms. Dotman?
Aye.
Thanks.
All right, we'll head into the conference room, and for members of the public, we don't anticipate any further action post-executive session.
And the same would be true for the Board of Education, of course.
I mean, I don't want to jump the shark.
Right, well,
It doesn't sound like it's necessarily good housing for Lakewood residents who want to move out of their houses.
true. Well, and you also have
Are you good? Nice to see you again.
I gotta start bringing like layers.
This is the dimmest light. Mine's on.
All right.
So dim.
All right. So I will move to exit executive session.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. Any discussion? Hearing none. Madam Clerk?
Baker, absent. Bullock.
Yes.
Evans.
Yes.
Keppel.
Yes.
Marks. Rader.
Yes.
Strebe. Strebe.
Yes.
Okay.
Exit.
Thank you. I just wanted to thank the city and thank President Keppel for hosting us this evening and for the great discussion. With that, I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
Second?
So moved.
Moved and seconded. Is there any? I believe it's been moved and seconded.
Tuesdays on
Is
Monday.
there any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? We are adjourned. Thank you.
Thank you. No further business for City Council. We're adjourned.
It was such a fun bunch.